Look at this symbol, the four lions of Sarnath. Today, it stands as India's national emblem, a globally recognized icon of peace, morality, and the enduring legacy of Emperor Ashoka. But the empire that actually carved these lions into stone was built on something entirely different. It was forged through relentless bloodshed, brutal assassinations, and a ruthless system of espionage. 2,300 years ago, a brilliant strategist named Chanakya and a young warrior named Chandragupta Maurya decided to unite a fractured Indian subcontinent. They didn't negotiate. They conquered, swallowing up smaller states to create the massive Mauryan Empire. The sheer scale of their hard power was staggering. An army of 200,000 infantry and thousands of war elephants patrolled the borders, while an invisible web of secret police kept the citizens in check. From day one, the entire Mauryan system was designed around a single, unforgiving doctrine: the state survives only through continuous expansion and total military fear. Decades later, that aggressive doctrine reached its peak under Chandragupta's grandson, Emperor Ashoka. Before his enlightenment, historical texts referred to him as Chandashoka, or Ashoka the Cruel, a man who reportedly executed 99 of his own brothers just to secure the throne. By the time he took power, there was only one major piece missing from the map: Kalinga. Located on the eastern coast in modern-day Odisha, this was a wealthy, fiercely independent state that openly defied Mauryan rule. Ashoka needed Kalinga. Controlling it meant securing highly lucrative maritime trade routes and finally achieving absolute, unchecked dominance over the entire subcontinent. In 261 BCE, he unleashed the full might of his military. Hundreds of thousands of Mauryan soldiers and armored war elephants marched into Kalinga in an overwhelming, unforgiving invasion. It was supposed to be his greatest triumph. Instead, the events of this invasion triggered a chain reaction that would eventually tear his empire apart. The Kalinga military fought fiercely, but they were vastly outnumbered. By the end of the conflict, 100,000 soldiers lay dead on the battlefield, and 150,000 civilians were marched away in chains. The slaughter was so intense that the local Daya River, which flows through this exact landscape, literally turned red with human blood. When Ashoka walked through the aftermath to survey his victory, he didn't find glory. He found rotting corpses scattered across the mud, accompanied by the agonizing cries of newly made widows and orphans. Staring at the sheer scale of the destruction he had caused, Ashoka suffered a total psychological break. He realized the absolute hollowness of military conquest. Right there on the battlefield, he dropped his sword, vowing never to wage war again. The carnage at Kalinga achieved the exact opposite of its objective. It didn't secure the empire, it conquered the emperor's conscience, effectively turning off the very military engine that kept the Mauryan state alive. Seeking redemption, Ashoka formally converted to Buddhism. The man known as the cruel warlord rebranded himself as Devanampriya, the beloved of the gods. He instituted a radical state policy called Dhamma Vijaya, or conquest by morality and peace. Every single plan for future military expansion was immediately canceled. To ensure every citizen understood this pivot, Ashoka broadcasted his new laws across the territory by erecting massive stone pillars in highly visible public spaces. This close-up of the ancient Brahmi script etched into the stone pillars explicitly banned animal sacrifices, mandated free public hospitals, and ordered religious tolerance. Historians recognize these edicts as some of the ancient world's first large-scale public welfare decrees. He even launched an international soft power campaign. Instead of sending generals to conquer neighboring lands, he sent his own son and daughter, Mahendra and Sanghamitra, all the way to Sri Lanka to teach Buddhist philosophy. Within a few years, Ashoka had cultivated what was arguably the most prosperous and ethical society on earth. But by replacing the sword with the lotus, he dismantled the aggressive survival mechanics that originally held the state together. This brings us to a fascinating historical question. What actually happens to a massive, centralized superpower built on military might when it suddenly decides to experience 40 straight years of absolute peace? The immediate consequence was severe military atrophy. The battle-hardened army that Chandragupta had built slowly degraded. Decades without combat turned the most feared fighting force in the world into a sluggish, untested parade force. Then came the economic drain. Ashoka's deep commitment to pacifism and public welfare required astronomical funding. He commissioned the construction of thousands of massive Buddhist monuments, like the Great Stupa at Sanchi, while keeping a vast roster of religious officials on the state payroll. This continuous, heavy social and religious spending completely hollowed out the once overflowing royal treasury in Magadha. To see the consequence, look at the currency of the era, the silver punch-marked Karshapana. As the state ran out of these coins, Ashoka's successors panicked. They imposed crushing new taxes on farmers and merchants to keep the government afloat, sparking fierce public resentment. The Mauryan state had become a victim of its own soaring idealism. It possessed infinite moral wealth, but on paper, it was functionally bankrupt. Without a terrifying military to act as a deterrent, old enemies noticed the vulnerability. Greek invaders began breaching the unprotected northwestern borders in modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, facing almost no organized resistance. Back at the capital, a severe leadership crisis paralyzed the government. Following Ashoka's death, the throne passed to a series of physically and strategically weak successors, including his blind son, Kunal. They were completely incapable of managing the vast bureaucracy or defending the crumbling borders. By 185 BCE, the remaining Mauryan military had seen enough. They had completely lost faith in the final king, Brihadratha. To the generals, the king wasn't a peaceful visionary. He was a fatal liability, leaving the nation exposed to foreign slaughter. The breaking point arrived during a routine military parade. In broad daylight, the commander-in-chief of the army, Pushyamitra Shunga, stepped forward and assassinated the king in front of his own troops, seizing control of the state out of brutal necessity. In the end, the tragic collapse of the Mauryan Empire leaves us with a harsh historical reality. To sustain a nation, the idealism of soft power must always be protected by the very real threat of hard power. True peace, it seems, cannot survive without the strength to defend it.